I want you to listen because if you do, you can make a lot of money filming weddings every single weekend. All right, so welcome to the Wedding Film School. My name is Jared, and today we're talking about how to film a wedding ceremony from 2, 3, and 4 different camera angles. This is gonna be the first series of videos that we're calling Wedding Film Basics, where we learn the basics of how to film a wedding. So whether you're first starting out or you've been doing weddings for years now, hopefully this is gonna be relevant information that honestly you could probably buy in a course somewhere for a lot of money, but you already know that we deliver this kind of content every single week for free right here on the Wedding Film School YouTube channel. And this series, this is gonna be the first of 3 different videos. And today we're gonna be talking about etiquette, we're gonna be talking about camera positionings, and we're gonna be talking about the other 180-degree rule that no one ever talks about.
Okay, so here we are in Providence, Rhode Island at the First Unitarian Church of Providence. And this is actually the location that my wife and I got married 2 years ago. We have a great relationship with them, and we thought it would be the perfect location to do a video like this. So we got our gear, let's head inside. Okay, so we made it inside, and the first step we're gonna take actually isn't to start setting up. The first step that we should take, and actually this is a step that you can take in the weeks before the wedding ceremony, is simply reach out to the caretakers of the building that you'll be in, especially in a space that's considered sacred like the one that we're in. This building, for instance, was erected in 1723. That is almost 300 years ago, and so people care about this space. Whether it's for religious reasons or historical reasons, the spaces that people get married in are important to somebody in most cases. So especially when we're in a building like this, we want to make sure that we're reaching out to the people that make decisions on a space like this. For instance, we might want to reach out to one of the pastors or the priests or the caretaker of this building the week of the wedding. Usually I like to reach out the week of the wedding so people don't forget who you are. If you reach out maybe a month or 2 beforehand, they're gonna forget who you are. In the hustle and bustle of wedding season, you're just another wedding videographer showing up with a bunch of gear and spreading out throughout the ceremony and making a ruckus. If we're able to reach out beforehand, what I've found is we are actually able to gain favor with that person if we are generating a little bit of a relationship and showing a lot of respect for the people that are in charge of this building. And actually, I find that if you're reaching out beforehand, if you're showing respect of a sacred space, a lot of times people will let you have a little bit more leeway, stand in spaces that they might not let someone else who didn't reach out or hasn't shown that same level of respect. And they give you a little bit more opportunity to get the kind of shots that you want. But it's important to realize when shooting a ceremony like this, it's not about you. It's not about the photographer, it's not about us as vendors. It's about really creating a great shooting environment and a great wedding environment for everyone who's involved. This includes the bride and groom and other vendors. And in this church specifically, there's actually 3 lanes, 3 aisles that we're gonna be working in. But before we start setting up, the first thing we have to establish is our 180-degree rule. Now you might say, what the heck is a 180-degree rule? We're actually walking in a 180-degree plane that's used during a wedding ceremony right now. The bride will walk down the aisle, and you want your cameras to be facing both this direction and oftentimes this direction to see the groom's facial reaction. So where do we place our cameras for this plane? And then once the bride reaches the front, reaches the groom with her dad or whoever's walking her down the aisle, a lot of times the plane changes to this direction. So it completely goes from this way to this way. So we're gonna be changing halfway through our ceremony to reflect that. Now, again, you might ask, what the heck is a 180-degree plane? Why is it important? Essentially, what a 180-degree plane allows you to do is have your camera angles talk to each other. So you're allowing lead room in the correct directions to allow the bride to talk to the groom and vice versa. It allows a much better viewing experience for the people watching at home as opposed to jumping from an angle that has the groom speaking this way and also the bride speaking that way. It doesn't really make much sense when it's cutting from one angle to another and having the correct cameras in the correct spaces allows for them to talk to each other, and for it to be a little less jarring to your viewing audience. Welcome to the side aisle. And believe it or not, you as a videographer can set up cameras in the side aisle, which brings up an interesting and seems like timeless conversation and discussion about the conflict between photographer and videographer. I think a lot of conflict can be diffused way ahead of time by simply having a conversation with a person who's going to be taking photos on the wedding day, saying where your cameras are going to be and then finding out where their cameras are going to be allows you to stay ahead of the curve. And isn't that what most of videography is just having a little bit of forethought, knowing what is about to happen, not just what is currently unfolding, but also just making a better working environment for everybody and making it so that mistakes aren't had on either end. So we dropped our gear in the back over there. Let's go take a look. So when we first arrive, we want to make sure we're dropping off our gear in a secure location that isn't going to be obtrusive to wedding guests, the wedding party, and obviously the bride and groom and the people who are managing the building. You don't want to just arrive and dump your gear and spread things out all over the place and be super obtrusive to the people that are spending a lot of money on making this area look really pretty, especially if there are guests arriving. Typically, we like to arrive at least a half an hour before the ceremony begins. And usually, guests are arriving as well half an hour before the ceremony begins. So if you arrive and you're dumping things out, it's gonna go against the grain of what the bride and groom are currently trying to make the space feel like. So you wanna get here, you wanna drop your gear off in a corner, out of the way of view of everybody, if possible. Have those conversations, come back to your gear, and start unpacking. And what I wanted to mention is about the gear setup that we currently have today is it's relatively small. We currently have one Pelican case, one Manfrotto case, as well as a gimbal. And the reason why I like that is so that one person can carry everything. If you're in a bind and you maybe have an assistant, they can carry all the gear inside and you can go have those conversations at the same time. If you need to leave quickly, one person can carry all of the gear. We've really worked hard on really taking things out of our bag every single year so that we're not just showing up with 5 or 6 different cases, spreading things out, being obtrusive, but then also making it super inconvenient for us when we're trying to be very fast. So keeping your gear to a minimum is really what we're trying to do as much as possible in this case where we're shooting your average wedding.
Okay, so hopefully that was helpful for you. And if you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up. And also, I just wanted to remind you too, because not a lot of people do this, is click that bell button, because if you do that, you can be alerted whenever we're going live. We do a lot of live videos and we'd love for you to have a voice in the conversation. Oftentimes these live videos are right after a camera release, and we'd love to have you included in that conversation. And lastly, give us a subscribe if you're not already. It's greatly appreciated. It helps us get great information to other wedding filmmakers as well. Make sure you're staying tuned for part 2 of this series of how to film a wedding ceremony. It's gonna be at the end of this video. In that video, we're gonna be talking about team roles. We're gonna be talking about the role of that cutaway camera. And we're gonna be talking about how to film a wedding as a solo operator as well. So make sure you're checking that out. You're not gonna wanna miss it. We'll see you next time, right here, same time, Wedding Film School.